Namaskar everyone, welcome to IIS deemed to be University Jaipur. We have completed section 12. All the parts of section 12 have been discussed in detail. It was regarding time of supply of goods under GST. Now in this video we are going to discuss the time of supply of services, that is section 13. Section 13 talks about time of supply of services in 4 scenarios, that is forward charge, reverse charge, voucher method and residual cases. Let's start each and every cases in detail. For understanding the time of supply of services under forward charge, for supply of services on which supplier is liable to pay tax, the time of supply will be the earlier of the dates arrived by both of these methods, that is date of invoice or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, if the invoice is issued within the time prescribed under section 31, or date of provision of services or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, if the invoice is not issued within the time prescribed under section 31. If the above two methods are not applicable, the time of supply will be the date on which receipt of services shows receipt of services in their books of accounts. So the date of receipt of payment denotes the date on which payment is recorded in the books of accounts of the entity that receives the payment, or the date on which payment is credited to entity's bank account, whichever is earlier. Suppose a part of consideration is paid in advance or invoice is issued for part payment, then the time of supply will not cover the full supply. The supply shall be deemed to have been made to the extent it is covered by the invoice or part payment thereof. The provision relating to time of supply in case of forward charge can be depicted through the diagram which I have mentioned over here. These diagrams have been taken from the icai.org, so you can have a look over there also. Now the topic which we were discussing, it was about the access payment. Now suppose in terms of provision of section 13, if a payment is received, or in case of payment up to rupees 1000 received in excess of the invoice value, the supplier can choose to take the date of invoice issued with respect to such excess amount as the date of supply of services in relation to that excess amount. This provision facilitates supplier to defer payment of tax on small amounts typically received by him in excess of the invoice value. So in case where excess amount is received, you are not required to issue a separate tax invoice for that case. Now, for in case under reverse charge, that is understanding the time of supply of services under the reverse charge, the time of supply of service on which GST is payable on reverse charge basis deals with two different situations, like the date of payment or date immediately following 60 days since issue of invoice by the supplier. Where it is not possible to determine the time of supply by using these parameters, then the time of supply will be the date of entry of the services in the books of accounts of the recipient of supply. Now let's discuss what this date of payment means. Date of payment means the date on which payment is recorded in books of accounts of the entity that receives the services, that is we are talking about the service receiver, or the date on which payment is debited from entity's bank account, whichever is earlier. So you will need to understand these definitions and points in detail. Next, when we talk about associate enterprises, in the case of services received from an associate enterprise which is located outside India, then the time of supply will be the date of payment for the services or the date of entry of services in the books of accounts of the recipient, whichever is earlier. The provisions relating to time of supply of services in case of reverse charge can be depicted through the diagram which is just on the next page, where you could see about associate enterprises. Next, if we talk about the voucher method, since I am not discussing about these charts in detail in the video, for that we will be discussing about each and every point in detail in the classroom. Now, for understanding the time of supply of services under voucher method, we have already discussed this method in the goods section. So, no changes are there. We are following entirely the same method, same formula which we were following in case of time of supply of goods. So, the term voucher has already been discussed under the heading time of supply of goods. The time of supply of vouchers that are exchangeable for services is stipulated as the date of issue of the voucher if supply is identifiable, or the date of redemption of voucher in all other cases. Next, if we talk about the residual method, again this is just a repetition of the last method which we have discussed. So, in this situation we follow, there are two formulas. Where determination of time of supply is not possible by the above provision, then time of supply shall be date on which periodical return for the period is required to be filed in normal cases, and in all other cases date on which GST is paid. Next, if we talk about the enhancement in the value addition on account of interest, late fee, etc., then the provision of time of supply in case of addition in value by way of interest, late fee, penalty for delayed payment of consideration are the same as we were following in the goods section, that is under section 12. So, for the last three cases, that is for the voucher method, for residual method and for interest and late fee payment, you have to refer to the video in which I have explained you about the time of supply in relation to goods. So, it becomes quite easy for you to understand and to remember these two different sections, section 12 and 13. If you have fully understood section 12, then in case of section 13, you just have to remember the formulas in case of forward and in case of reverse charge method. By this, we come to end of this class. Thank you so much.